I can still hear the sharp click of the locks engaging, as if the car hadn't just closed its doors, it had closed off my exit from the world. That clack echoed in my ribs. And right after that sound, he said the sentence that changed everything that night, in the choked voice of a man who'd already lost more than anyone should. Please, believe me. That's all I'm asking. Believe me. It wasn't just a request. It was a plea. The kind that comes from someone who's been called a liar so many times that he started doubting his own memories. I was in the back seat of the cab, purse held tight against my chest, trying to understand why a grown man was trembling behind the wheel. His big hands gripped the leather like it was the last solid thing left in his life. I could see half his face in the rearview mirror. One eye, part of a brow, a slice of his mouth. But that was enough for me to recognize that kind of fear. Not fear of traffic, not fear of being robbed. Another kind. A kind I knew well. The fear of being accused without a chance to defend yourself. Ma'am, please, don't get out. Not yet. His voice cracked on please. Grown men don't talk like that unless something inside them's already breaking. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my own body reacted anyway. A cold shiver slid up my spine, not from the weather, but from intuition. Outside, the city kept moving like normal. Headlights flashing by, people heading home, life going on. Inside that cab, though, time stopped, and only 3 things existed: me, him, and that rearview mirror that seemed to reflect more past than road. Before I could even form a question, the radio on the dashboard hissed loudly, slicing through the silence like a blade. A metallic voice announced a numerical code, fast, technical, meaningless to me. But to him, it meant everything. The blood drained from his face instantly. He went pale in a way I've only seen in people getting news they can't recover from. His eyes hardened, his breath locked in his chest, and he whispered the code under his breath like a name he'd been avoiding for years. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a strange night. This was an old ghost returning. He held his breath for a few seconds, like someone bracing for a punch he'd taken before. I recognized that gesture. It's the same one we make when someone repeats a cruel accusation we've heard 1,000 times. It was you. This is your fault. I warned you. He wouldn't look at me, did everything he could not to meet my eyes in the mirror. And still, without facing me, he hit the lock button again. A small gesture, but it told me more about his past than any resume could have. This man wasn't just a driver. He was someone who'd lived under suspicion before. Believe me, he repeated, but couldn't finish the sentence. I wanted to say that I believed him, but I didn't even know what he was asking me to believe. All I knew was that this fear wasn't fabricated. Real fear has a tremor you can't fake. Then he turned onto a street that wasn't on the usual route. I've lived in this city for years. I could find my way to the hospital with my eyes closed. That street wasn't a shortcut. It wasn't avoiding traffic. It was escape. My stomach tightened. This isn't the normal route, is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took too long to answer. Too long for it to be simple route calculation. It's safer. But the way he said safer told me everything. He wasn't trying to keep me safe. He was trying to keep himself safe. His eyes kept jumping from one mirror to another. Rapid, rhythmic, obsessive. I'd seen that before. The behavior of someone who thinks they're being followed. A constant scan of every reflection, every pair of headlights, every shadow. Like he was driving through invisible footprints he hoped no one else could trace. Then my phone vibrated in my lap. Jade, my daughter. Her contact photo lit up the screen, holding a cup of coffee, smiling in that way that always makes me breathe better, even on dark days. I answered, tired but trying to sound warm, using that mother tone that hides exhaustion the same way makeup hides a bruise. Hey, Mom, everything okay? You almost there? All good, honey. I'm headed to the exam, remember? I'll go straight home after. Eat something real, not just coffee. As I talked, I caught his reaction in my peripheral vision. Something shifted. The skin around his eyes tightened, his chin trembled, and his eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. He gripped the wheel harder, like he was holding on to himself. The sound of a girl's voice, even one that wasn't his, had touched a wound deep inside him. When I hung up, he inhaled hard, the way someone does when they're trying to pull an old cry out of his chest. And then he said it. I've sat in this back seat before, but not as a driver, as a suspect. The words dropped into the air like lead. My throat closed. He swallowed, like his body needed permission to keep talking. Years ago, the police dragged me out of my car like I was a monster. I hadn't done anything, nothing, but nobody cared. They looked at me like the verdict was already tattooed on my forehead. Something inside me cracked. Because while I'd never sat in the back of a police car, I did know the feeling of trying to explain yourself to people who had already decided you were wrong. Since that day, he continued, any radio call, any blue light, my body remembers what it felt like to be shoved into that cruiser with no chance to speak. A part of me broke open, because I knew that feeling. Not his version, not that level of terror, but the emotional version of it. All the times I'd been accused of exaggerating, all the times my voice wasn't enough, all the moments when people chose the convenient version over the real one. I was about to answer him when blue lights flashed across the mirror. First far away, then too close. A patrol car, right behind us. He pulled over before they even signaled, a reflex learned through fear. His right hand shook so violently he could barely turn on the hazard lights. He stared straight ahead, unblinking, like the past had finally found him again. In that split second, I finally understood. His fear had nothing to do with me. I was just a witness to a story replaying itself, a story that ruined his life once and was threatening to do it again. The cruiser stopped. Doors opened. 2 officers approached. One looked at the cab's license plate, then at Caleb's face, with a type of familiarity no routine stop should ever have. And then I heard the question that sliced our night open. Mr. Monroe, where's the recording? At that moment, I didn't know it yet, but that question was about to drag not only his past to the surface, but everything I'd spent years sweeping under my own rugs. Because that night, I wasn't just inside his cab. Without realizing it, I was sitting inside the second chance of my own life. I like to tell myself that night started in the back of that cab, but I know that's not true. It started way before. It started in all the times I said, it's fine, when nothing was fine. It started in the times I cried in the clinic bathroom so I wouldn't worry anyone. It started in those mornings when I woke up before sunrise to make coffee for a house where I was needed, but not really seen. The world doesn't collapse all at once. It cracks slowly. And in my case, the cracks had been forming for years. My routine, the kind of silence no one notices. I always wake up before my alarm, not out of discipline, but out of habit. The habit of a woman who learned to exist before everyone else opens their eyes. The kitchen still smells like yesterday, and the old coffee maker hisses like it's tired too. On the fridge, there's a little note from Jade. Mom, I'll be at the library after work. Don't wait up. Love you. I know she loves me. Of course I do. But sometimes it feels like her love you comes wrapped in hurry, like a box she has to check before she runs off to her real life. And still, I save the note carefully because women like me learn to store crumbs of affection as if they were feasts. At work, the micro injustices come in drops. Danielle, can you look this over real quick? Danny, you could stay just 1 more hour, right? You're still here? Great. Can you handle this for me? I stay, I handle it, I deliver. And no one notices that sometimes the most efficient woman in the room is the one bleeding the most on the inside. At lunch, I eat my packed food alone while everyone else laughs in the break room. I like the quiet, but it stings too. The feeling of being useful enough to rely on, but not enough to include. Late afternoon, I answer Jade's missed messages. "Mom, have you seen my jacket? Mom, can you send me $40? Mom, I'm heading out, okay?" Almost never. "And you, Mom, how are you doing?" I get it. Her life is moving fast. But it still hurts. The decision to take the cab and the intuition I ignored. When I left the clinic that night, it was already dark. The wind stung my face, and my knees complained about another day on my feet. The bus stop was crowded, every face worn out, and I knew the wait would be long. I just wanted to get to the hospital, do my test, go home, and pretend everything was still under control. Then I saw the cab, engine running, headlights on. Getting in was pure impulse. Impulse mixed with exhaustion, and that feeling that if I didn't make my life easier in that one small moment, nobody else would. As soon as I sat down, I sensed something off. The driver watched me for a second too long. Not like a man sizing up a woman, like someone trying to decide if I was a threat or a witness. Only now do I understand how important that look was. "Good evening," I said. He answered almost under his breath, confirmed the destination. His silence wasn't rudeness, it was armor. The more active protagonist, I notice, think, remember, connect. For the first few minutes, I enjoyed the quiet. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city lights smear into streaks. But the longer he drove, the more familiar a certain uneasiness became. That kind of discomfort that doesn't make noise, but has weight. Why did he check the mirrors so often? Why did he change streets without saying a word? Why did his jaw tense every time a car got too close? I know that kind of trembling. It's the tremor of someone who expects the worst because they've already lived the worst. And, as always happens with me, my own memories started rising. I remembered every time someone raised their voice at me, and I stayed quiet to avoid a fight. Times I was accused of not doing enough, even when I was doing everything. Times someone called my exhaustion dramatic. People who hear that enough times learn to stay silent. And when they see someone shaking on the outside, they recognize the pain without effort. Jade's phone call and the unexpected trigger. When my phone rang and I saw Jade's face on the screen, I felt that mix of love and tightness in my chest. I answered with my usual soft voice, trying to hide how tired I was. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine, honey, on my way to the exam." That's when it happened. His face changed. He swallowed hard, his eyes glossed over, and his knuckles went white around the wheel. Like the sound of a daughter's voice, any daughter's, had cracked open something old inside him. In that moment, I felt the first real connection to his pain. Because I know what it's like to lose a bond slowly, to feel someone pulling away without wanting to hurt you, and hurting you anyway. The detour, and my first act of agency. He turned down a street I would never choose at night. It wasn't the route. It wasn't a shortcut. It was an escape path. My heart started pounding, and I leaned forward. "Sir, what street is this?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. I was done being a passive passenger. He took too long to answer. "It's safer." Safer? For who? I stared at the mirror, and he avoided my eyes. That's when I started to understand that I wasn't just witnessing his fear. I was inside a traumatic rerun. And I might be the only person who could keep it from ending the same way as last time. The code on the radio and my emotional recognition. When the radio hissed and that code came through again, something inside me jolted. Not my fear, his. The way his breathing changed, the twitch in his jaw, the way he repeated the code like he was hearing his own name in an old case file. I recognize that kind of reaction. It isn't made-up panic. It's the body remembering. And right then, exactly then, I realized I was connected to his fate in a way that didn't make sense yet, but would. The patrol car, and my decision to stay. When the blue lights appeared in the rear view, he pulled over before they even asked. It was pure reflex, the reflex of someone who's learned to obey first and understand later. I could have asked to get out. I could have stepped away. I could have told myself, this isn't about me. But something stronger held me there. An inner voice, the same one I'd ignored for years. Stay. Don't abandon this man now. You know exactly what it feels like to be abandoned when you need someone the most. So I stayed. Not for him, but because in that second, I saw my own story reflected in his fear. When the officer asked about the recording, something in me woke up. Mr. Monroe, where is the recording? That line sliced through the air in the car. And when I saw the terror on his face, not surprise, terror, I understood. I was about to uncover a truth that wasn't only his. It was also about me. About all the times I'd been accused without being heard. About all the times the world believed the worst version of me over my own words. And that's when my role changed. I was no longer the passenger. I was the witness. I was the presence. I was the person finally seeing what no one bothered to see the first time. A man begging to be believed. And deep down, I knew. That night hadn't chosen me by accident, because I was just as desperate for someone to finally believe me. I've always believed a woman's intuition doesn't fail. What fails is our courage to listen to what it's screaming on the inside. And that night, standing under flashing blue lights with Caleb trembling beside me, my intuition wasn't whispering. It was roaring. Every detail felt sharper than it should. Every silence felt loaded. Every movement felt like a thread pulling me deeper into a story I didn't yet understand, but was already part of. The moment he stepped out of the car and my role changed. When the officers asked Caleb to exit the vehicle, something in me solidified. I had seen this posture before. Not his, theirs. The posture of people who look at someone as guilty before asking a single question. I know that look too well. I've received it in arguments, at work, in moments when simply defending myself made me the problem. Maybe that's why I wasn't frozen. I was awake. When Caleb stepped out, the fear running through his body wasn't ordinary fear. It was the kind of fear that lives in bone marrow, trauma echoing through the spine. His shoulders curled inward like he'd learned long ago that making himself smaller made the world hurt less. And I couldn't look away. The officer spoke to him a few steps ahead, but I stayed by the open door, watching the entire scene with a strange sense of déjà vu, like I already knew this story's ending, a bad one. That's when I noticed something no one else saw. The rearview mirror was tilted toward me, not the road, not the officers, me. My heart jolted. He needed to see me, not because he feared me, but because he feared I might vanish, disappear, like she did, like the woman from the old case, the one whose name hung between every word that night. And without meaning to, the first puzzle piece clicked into place. I'm questioned and choose my side. When the officers called me over, the cold night hit my face hard. I felt like I was stepping not just out of the cab, but into a chapter of Caleb's life that had been locked shut long ago. Miss Morgan, did you notice anything unusual during your ride? Yes, everything. But I didn't mention the detour, or the panic, or the trembling, because nothing in my gut believed Caleb was dangerous. He seemed scared, I said, but not of me. Officer Calloway studied me in a way that told me she understood exactly what I meant. There are fears that don't come from strangers. They come from memory. The second puzzle piece, the repeated code. While she and I spoke, the radio crackled again. That same code, K47. Caleb froze. Not like someone caught lying, but like someone hearing the name of their abuser spoken out loud. I watched every ripple of tension move through his body. K47 wasn't just a number, it was a scar. And suddenly, the night felt heavier. The third puzzle piece, the handprint on the glass. When I turned toward the cab, something caught the corner of my eye, a smudge on the inside of the back window. It looked like fingers, pressed hard, dragged downward. Old enough to fade, young enough to still exist. I touched it, cold. My stomach dropped. It felt like a hand reaching out of the past, the last imprint of a woman who never made it home. I stepped back, breath tight. This wasn't just a traffic stop. This was a grave reopening. The fourth puzzle piece, Calloway's reaction. Officer Calloway paced, tablet in hand, scanning information too fast for me to follow, until she stopped abruptly. Her eyebrow arched. Her entire posture changed. She had found something. "Monroe," she called, voice sharp with realization. "There's something in the report you need to hear." Officer Grant tried to intervene. "That's not necessary." "It is necessary," she snapped. I knew then. Whatever she found wasn't procedural. It was personal. And then she said it. "The complaint against you? It was filed by someone in your own family." The world shifted. Caleb didn't react with confusion. He reacted with devastation. Like the blow wasn't surprising, only confirming something he'd feared all along. As though betrayal was a language he was fluent in. The lights from the cab reflected off his face as it crumbled inward. "No," he whispered. She wouldn't do that again." Again. That single word told me everything. The car that had been following us wakes up. The black car parked farther down the street flicked on its interior light for just 1 second. A quick, deliberate flash. Calloway saw it. Grant stiffened. But it was Caleb's face that told the truth. Terror, recognition. He knew who was inside. He had known since the beginning. The car wasn't watching the police. It was watching him. A memory inside me opened like a wound. Because I knew this dynamic too well. Someone in your family says you're the problem. Someone rewrites your story. Someone convinces everyone that their version is the truth. Someone who should love you decides instead to shape the world in a way that breaks you. And you spend years trying to prove you're not the monster they painted. His pain hit the same bruises I'd carried quietly for years. The moment everything shifted between us, I walked toward him, slow, deliberate. I touched his arm gently. His eyes lifted, wet, frightened, searching for any sign of faith. And I told him the one sentence I needed to hear a lifetime ago. "Caleb, I'm here. I see you." Something in him collapsed, but in a way that made space for truth to finally breathe. In that moment, the investigation wasn't just official. It was intimate. It was human. It was a reckoning. And deep in my chest, I understood something with terrifying clarity. I wasn't here by accident. I wasn't just a witness to his story. I was a mirror of it. And the shadows we were about to face belonged to both of us. I used to think the world fell apart all at once. One catastrophic moment, one revelation, one breaking point. But standing under those sirens, watching Officer Calloway hold that tablet like it was something radioactive, I learned the truth. The world doesn't break in a single blow. It breaks in layers. First, what you can see, then what you tried to hide, and finally, what someone buried so deep you were never meant to find it. That night, we reached the third layer. The moment Calloway turned the screen, Calloway's face was tight. Not angry, conflicted. Like someone who knew the truth was going to wound the person who least deserved another wound. She drew in a long, steady breath, then said, "Mr. Monroe, the most recent complaint has a serious inconsistency." Something inside Caleb froze. Officer Grant stepped forward. "Let me see it first." "No," she cut him off sharply. "He needs to see this." And she turned the tablet toward him. I couldn't read the words from where I stood, but I saw the impact. Caleb's entire body collapsed inward, the way a person folds when they're struck somewhere no one can see. His mouth parted, his eyes widened. His hand hovered at his chest like he couldn't breathe. I felt it too, like the air around us had been vacuumed out. "No," he whispered. She wouldn't do this." Calloway swallowed, pain flickering behind her professionalism. "Caleb, the audio attached to the complaint is fake." I felt my own heart stutter. Fake, manipulated, spliced, a conversation that never happened. Grant stepped closer. Manipulated how? Cut up, rearranged, stitched together. Someone built an incriminating recording from bits of his actual voice. Caleb pressed his palms into his face, voice cracking. "My own sister used my voice." And then he whispered something that gutted me. "If my own family doesn't believe me, who ever will?" I felt my throat burn. That question wasn't just his. It had lived inside me for years. For every time I was told I was exaggerating, for every time someone rewrote my truth into something more convenient, for every time my pain was dismissed because someone else's version sounded more comfortable. I stepped closer. "I believe you, Caleb." He lifted his head, eyes ruined, lips trembling, and for the first time all night, someone finally saw him. But the night wasn't done with us, not even close. Because while I was comforting him, something shifted in the darkness ahead. The black car, the one that had been following us earlier, the one that had watched the whole scene in silence, its headlights suddenly flashed on. A cold, sharp burst of light that carved through the air and hit Caleb straight in the face. He flinched violently. Calloway saw it, Grant saw it, and I saw the truth in Caleb's eyes. He knew exactly who was inside that car. "Monroe," Calloway asked, stepping forward. "Who is that?" His throat worked. His lips trembled. 3 seconds passed. 3 seconds that felt like the longest of his life. And then he whispered, "It's her." My stomach dropped. His sister. The same sister who faked the recording? The same sister who filed the complaint? The same sister who had been watching, waiting, calculating? Grant moved immediately. That's interference in an ongoing He didn't finish, because the black car sped off, fast, smooth, rehearsed, like someone who had practiced disappearing. Calloway cursed under her breath and ran to the patrol car. Grant followed, shouting into his radio. And suddenly, the street was quiet. Too quiet. Just me and Caleb. And the truth finally bleeding through every crack. And then came the second twist, the blow that shattered him. Calloway returned minutes later, breathless, holding a second document. Her face was ashen. "Caleb, we found something else in the report." He shook his head, already defeated. I can't take more tonight." But she continued anyway. The complaint didn't just include the manipulated audio. There was also a signed statement. His knees nearly buckled. "A what?" She handed him the page. I watched the color drain from his face as he read it, slowly, disbelieving, breaking. This His voice barely existed. "This says I admitted knowing where she was." He looked up, horrified. "I never signed this. I never." Calloway nodded grimly. "You didn't. The signature was analyzed. It belongs to your sister." Something inside him shattered so loudly, I swear I heard it. He staggered backward, dropping the paper, hands trembling violently. She forged my name. She made the world believe I was guilty. And I believed her. I believed I was the problem. His voice cracked into something animal, wounded, ancient. I stepped forward and caught his arm before he fell. "Caleb, look at me." He shook his head, tears streaming, breath ragged. "No one ever believed me. Not then, not now. My sister told everyone I was dangerous, broken, unstable, and I thought maybe she was right." I cupped his face gently, firmly, grounding him. "Listen to me. Your sister didn't destroy your life because you were dangerous. She destroyed your life because the truth scared her." His eyes searched mine, desperate for something solid to hold on to. Why would she do this to me? And my answer came from the deepest part of me, the part that still aches from my own family's betrayals. Because some people can't survive unless they rewrite the world so they're the hero. And rewriting the world requires a villain. He sobbed, quietly, violently, leaning into my hands like someone finally allowed to collapse. And I held him, not because he was weak, but because he had been strong alone for far too long. This was not the end of his story. It was the moment it finally began. When he pulled away, breathing steadier, something new had settled into his expression. Resolve. "I'm done letting her control my life," he whispered. "I'm going to fight this." I nodded. "And you won't fight it alone." He looked at me as if those words were the first home he'd ever been offered. I used to think fear was loud, sirens, shouting, running, alarms. But standing beside Caleb after discovering the truth about his sister, I learned something much more terrifying. The worst kind of fear is silent. The kind that settles in your bones. The kind that steals your breath 1 inch at a time. The kind that destroys you quietly, without witnesses. And that night, his fear awakened mine. Not the panicked kind, but the ancient kind. The one that remembers every injustice we've ever swallowed. Because what happened to him wasn't just betrayal. It was familiar. I had lived versions of it too. His collapse and the mirror inside me. Caleb stood there with his hands trembling, but his eyes were worse, empty. In that way a person looks when their world isn't just falling apart, it's finally telling the truth about itself. His sister hadn't just framed him, she had rewritten his life. And as he broke down, something inside me cracked open too, a drawer full of memories I had kept locked for years. My ex-husband calling me dramatic, my sister saying I was too sensitive, my boss ignoring me when I asked for a day off for a medical exam, my daughter loving me, but rushing past my needs like they were furniture. And the voices, the ones that linger long after the people are gone. "You're overreacting. You remember wrong. No one's going to believe you." Watching Caleb collapse was like watching my younger self, the self who never got the chance to prove her version of anything. And maybe that's why, when he fell inward, I stepped forward. Not to save him, but to join him. The moment the plan was born, quietly, painfully, he rubbed his face with both hands like he was trying to wake himself up from a nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was his life. "Caleb," I said softly. He turned toward me, the kind of slow turn someone makes when they're afraid of what they might see in your eyes. But I didn't have pity. I had recognition. You're not going to let her keep controlling your story." He let out a broken laugh, not amusement, but disbelief. "I don't even know where to start." "That's okay," I said. "You don't need a map. You just need to stand up." It was the first time that night I used "we," and he heard it, because for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. The protagonist shifts. I step into the center. While Caleb tried to steady himself, my mind kept racing, not with fear, but with clarity. There were patterns he was too wounded to see. His sister sent the edited audio the same day we were in that cab. She followed us. She watched the police. She forged signatures before. She staged the narrative once. She could have staged it again. And then the thought hit me like cold water. If she edited the audio, she might have been the last person to see the missing woman alive. I saw the realization flicker through Caleb's expression when I said it. His breath caught. His pupils dilated. "Are you saying she—" He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We both understood. His sister hadn't just framed him for the past. She was framing him to cover the present. And everything inside him cracked open again. But this time, I was steady enough for both of us. My silent decision. I choose him, and I choose myself. The night air was sharp, but something warmer grew inside me. Not anger exactly, but resolve. I reached for his hand. He let me. "You deserve the truth," I said, "and I'm going to help you get it." He looked at me with something raw and vulnerable, something I recognized because I had carried it too. Hope, in its earliest, most fragile form. "Danny, I'm scared." "I know," I told him. "I'm scared too. But fear only rules us when we let it." He nodded, barely, as if agreeing with courage he hadn't learned yet. Then he whispered, "I have to face her. And you won't face her alone." My voice didn't shake this time. I meant every word. Foreshadowing the next collapse. Before either of us could say anything else, the abandoned patrol car behind us crackled to life. Officer Calloway's voice burst through. "Monroe, do not move. We found something at your sister's house. I repeat, stay where you are." My blood ran cold. Caleb's eyes widened with dread. And I knew, no matter how dark the night had been so far, the worst truth was still on its way. I used to think the worst kind of pain was the kind we couldn't name. But that night, standing beside Caleb as the truth closed in on him from every direction, I learned something much harsher. The worst pain is the one that finally gets a name. Because once it's named, there's no going back. And the name of his pain, the ghost haunting every corner of his life, was his sister. Calloway's voice cracking through the radio. The abandoned patrol car behind us hissed, then erupted. "Monroe, listen carefully. We found something at your sister's house. Do not move. We're on our way back." The street fell silent. Not peaceful silent, but the kind of silence the air holds right before a building collapses. Caleb's breath hitched hard. "Her house?" he whispered. "What else did she do?" He wasn't asking me. He was asking the universe, the past, the years that had already stolen so much from him. And I felt something inside me shift. I was no longer a bystander to his suffering. I was becoming a witness and a pillar. I stepped closer because he's unraveling. His hands were pressed to his forehead, fingers trembling, muscles locked tight beneath his skin. "Caleb," I said gently. He shook his head, jaw clenched, tears threatening to spill. No, why would she? Why would my own sister?" His voice cracked into rawness. And that ache, that familiarity of being betrayed by someone who should have been your safest place, that hit me directly in the chest. I put my hand on his arm, grounding him. "You're not alone," I whispered. He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping, slow, heavy, like it came from somewhere years deep. "I don't understand," he said, voice shaking. "We grew up together. She said she was protecting the family." "Sometimes," I said softly, "people who live behind lies need to destroy anyone who tells the truth." He opened his eyes, and for the first time that night, he looked at me instead of just seeing me. Like he needed someone to hold the other end of the truth so it wouldn't crush him. The patrol car returns with the weight of revelation. 2 blue beams appeared on the horizon, slicing through the night. When the cruiser stopped, Calloway got out fast. Grant followed, holding a folder like it weighed the world. Calloway didn't soften her voice this time. "Monroe, what we found proves the old investigation was compromised." Caleb's breath faltered. Grant stepped forward. "And we found personal belongings of the missing woman in your sister's house." The world didn't just stop for Caleb. It disintegrated. He staggered backward, eyes wide, lips trembling. No, she told me I ruined everything. She said His words broke apart like glass dropping from a height. Calloway placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture from someone in uniform. "Caleb, this wasn't just a mistake. Your sister intentionally misled the investigation. She's been manipulating the evidence for years." He whispered, barely audible. "She framed me to hide what she did." And then he fell. Not dramatically, not theatrically, but the way a person falls when their entire world finally tells the truth. His knees hit the pavement. His hands slid down his face. His shoulders shook with silent, unbearable sobs. And without thinking, I knelt beside him. Not to rescue him, not to fix him, but because when someone finally breaks open the truth, the least you can do is sit in the rubble with them. The second twist, the revelation that changes everything. Grant opened another envelope. My stomach knotted. He pulled out a paper, old, yellowed, frayed at the edges. "A copy of your original statement," Grant said. Caleb took it with shaking hands. He read the first lines, then recoiled like the page had burned him. This isn't what I said. This isn't my statement. These aren't my words." Grant nodded. "It's not yours. Part of your original deposition was written by your sister." Caleb stared at him, breath gone. "And the signature?" he asked, though he already knew. "Also hers," Grant confirmed. "Forensics matched it." Caleb's face cracked open. The horror of a man realizing he didn't just lose years of his life. He lost them because someone he trusted designed the lie. He fell backward, sitting on the cold ground, hands over his mouth. My God, I lived trapped inside a crime I never committed because she wanted me to. I reached for his hand. He grabbed it with desperate strength, like I was the last solid thing left. "Caleb," I whispered, "she destroyed parts of your story, but she didn't destroy you." His eyes lifted, broken but alive, searching, learning how to breathe all over again. And for the first time that night, something new flickered in them, strength born from truth. Not loud strength, not heroic strength, but the quiet kind, the kind that survives what should have killed it. His choice and our turning point. He wiped his face, straightened his back, pulled in one long, trembling breath. "I'm going to see this through," he said softly. "Not for revenge, for the truth." I nodded. "And you won't walk that road alone." He gave me a small, devastated smile. "Thank you, Danny. You were the only one who stayed, the only one who saw me." I touched his cheek. "Because no one ever saw me either, Caleb. And I know exactly what that does to a person." He closed his eyes. exhaling something heavy and old, something he'd carried alone for too many years. Then he stood, ready to enter the cruiser. As the blue lights washed over the street one last time, I felt something shift inside me too. I wasn't the woman who walked into that cab exhausted and invisible. I was the woman who chose to stay, to witness, to believe, to be believed. And the most transformative part of our journey was still ahead. After that night, nothing in my life fit back into its old place. And honestly, thank God. I'd spent years trying to hold everything together: work, home, motherhood, silence. Like my purpose in the world was to be the invisible glue for everyone else's chaos. But walking beside Caleb through the aftermath of his truth taught me something I had avoided for far too long. Sometimes what we call balance is just injustice arranged neatly. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Official justice, slow, but finally facing the right direction. A few days after the confrontation, my phone rang while I was washing dishes, hands deep in hot, soapy water. I wiped my fingers on a towel and answered. "Danielle, it's Officer Calloway." My heart skipped. "We have updates. The audio was confirmed as edited by his sister, and the objects found in her home carry only her prints. There's no way to maintain the old version anymore." I leaned a hand on the counter so I wouldn't lose my balance. This wasn't just about Caleb. It was about every time someone twisted the truth and everyone else believed them instead of you. "What about Caleb?" I asked. "He's quiet, but different. I think he finally understands he wasn't imagining things all these years. The system failed him. His family failed him. But now, they can't pretend they don't know." When she hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from relief mixed with anger, a deep, righteous anger for every injustice that goes unacknowledged in silence. Right there in my messy little kitchen, I promised myself something. I would never again let anyone else write my story. Not in whispers, not in accusations, not in guilt, not in silence. Reorganization at home. Me, Jade, and small restitutions that heal. At home, nothing changed overnight, but something in Jade softened, subtly at first, then more clearly. One evening I came home from dropping off paperwork at the precinct. It was late. My knees ached and my head throbbed. When I opened the door, the smell of warm food greeted me. Jade stood in the kitchen stirring a pot. "I made beef stroganoff, Mom. I know you barely eat when you're stressed." I froze. That simple act, food waiting for me, hit somewhere deep, somewhere sore. "Thank you, sweetheart." She sat across from me while I'd ate, fingers folding and unfolding a napkin. "Mom, is the taxi driver okay?" I breathed in slowly. He's rebuilding himself, finding out he wasn't the monster the story made him out to be, but the victim of someone who should have protected him. Jade's eyes lowered. It's awful when the person who's supposed to protect you ends up hurting you instead. That sentence hit me like a stone thrown straight through memory. I reached out and touched her hand. "That's why we have to be careful, Jade, not to become that kind of person for anyone. Not as sisters, not as partners, not as daughters." She nodded, not defensive, not annoyed, but understanding. And just like that, something repaired itself between us, quietly, gently. Reorganization at work. I stop being the one who absorbs everything. At the clinic, the invisible weight I used to carry suddenly became visible, to me at least. One afternoon, the receptionist called out, "Danny, could you stay 2 extra hours? The doctor's running behind," and I inhaled deeply. I thought of Caleb shrinking into himself for years, believing the worst because someone told him he deserved it. I thought of myself shrinking in the same way. And then I said it. "No, I have plans. I've already completed what I'm scheduled for today." She blinked, startled. I smiled, gentle, firm. She turned to ask someone else. And just like that, something inside me reorganized. I was no longer the woman who absorbed every inconvenience just because I could. If anyone asked what changed, I'd say, I stopped volunteering to be the scapegoat for other people's chaos. And Caleb? Justice comes, but it leaves marks. He went through hearings, document reviews, revisiting evidence that had been twisted against him for years. Every phone call from him carried a different layer of emotion: fear, grief, anger, relief, exhaustion, dignity returning like a slow sunrise. They're reopening the missing woman's case, he told me once. And now my sister's being investigated, not as a witness, as a suspect. Silence. It hurts, Danny. She's my sister. I wanted her to be good. I wanted her to be someone I could trust. But if I don't face this, I'll spend the rest of my life carrying her guilt. I felt my throat tighten. You won't carry what isn't yours anymore. Those days are over. He exhaled shakily. You know what's strange? I thought when the truth finally came out, I'd feel vengeful. But instead, I feel something like peace. I smiled, even alone. That's because vengeance doesn't steady the soul. Truth does. Over time, I noticed something changing in him too. Not just relief, grounding. He stopped speaking like a man trying to prove he wasn't a monster. He started speaking like someone reclaiming his place in the world. And then, one day, he asked, Danny, are you defending yourself better out there? That question undid me. Because no one ever asked me that. I told him about Jade, the dinner waiting for me, the small kindnesses, the boundaries I was finally drawing at work. And for the first time, I heard myself describe my life as something I was sculpting, not surviving. You're healing too, he said quietly. What they did to me brought to light the things you went through in silence. He was right. The echo of his story inside mine. Life didn't magically become perfect. He still had sleepless nights. I still had days when I felt invisible. His sister still had to face the justice system. And there was still a missing woman whose truth deserved to be told. But one thing changed forever. Neither of us was alone anymore. I looked in the mirror one morning and realized I didn't just see the tired mother, the overworked employee, the woman who held the world together quietly. I saw someone who stayed in that cab, who chose to witness instead of flee, who chose courage over convenience. And that changed everything. Inside me, around me, for him, for us. The call that sealed the shift. One afternoon, the phone rang again. Danielle, Calloway said, I wanted you to know before the report becomes public, Caleb's name will be officially cleared. He will no longer be listed as a suspect. And internally, we're acknowledging that the system failed him. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, tears falling. She added, and you played a crucial role, not only that night, but in how you described everything. The way you insisted on being heard. The way you saw the human being, not the case file. When the call ended, I cried harder. For him, for me, for every woman who washes dishes at night replaying conversations where no one believed her. Because justice isn't only what the courts deliver. Justice is someone finally saying, you weren't imagining it. It was real. You deserved better. That's when I realized my life split into before the cab ride and after. And the after was just beginning. I used to hear people say that life changes quietly, first inside, then outside. But after everything I lived through with Caleb, I know the truth. Life doesn't change in silence. It changes in impact, in the shock, in the break, in the moment the truth finally comes out. Even when it hurts so much, it feels like your skin might split open. Now, when I close my eyes, I can still return to that night in perfect detail. The crooked rearview mirror, the blue light slicing through his terror, the black car watching like a shadow with a pulse, the radio spitting out codes he knew by heart. But now, those memories feel different, not lighter, just repositioned. Because the weight isn't on him anymore, and it isn't on me either. His freedom and how it freed me too. After endless hearings, old files resurfacing, testimonies revisited, and truths finally laid bare, the case reached its turning point. Caleb was officially cleared. Not by speculation, not by opinions, but by evidence, the very thing his sister tried to twist into a weapon. His name restored, his record corrected, his story reclaimed. And when he walked toward me weeks later with that new expression, not joy, not triumph, but a quiet, deeply earned calm, I understood the depth of this victory. "Danny," he said, "I thought the truth would drag me back into the past, but it's taking me somewhere new." I smiled at him, a small smile, the kind that says more than a wide one ever could. "You deserve somewhere new." He took my hand. No rush, no fear, just presence. And in that gentle touch, I realized it wasn't only his rebirth I witnessed, it was mine too. My life finally falling into place. At home, things weren't perfect. They were honest, and that was enough. Jade began showing up in my world more intentionally, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Sometimes I'd come home and she'd be on the couch waiting, asking how my day was. Sometimes she cooked with me, our conversations soft and careful, as if we were both relearning what it meant to belong to each other. And for the first time, I saw not just my daughter, but a young woman trying to love me better. At work, I stopped bending until I broke, stopped volunteering for burdens that weren't mine, stopped mistaking endurance for virtue. I learned to say no, not with anger, but with a calm understanding that my time had value too. I took back my mornings, my breath, my body, my dignity. The cure didn't come as fireworks. It came as a whisper inside me. I don't accept what destroys me anymore. And that whisper changed everything. And Caleb, he's learning to inhabit his own name again. Real justice isn't someone else suffering. It's a person finally getting back what was stolen: their truth, their voice, their freedom. Caleb moved into a small apartment by the river, started driving again, but on his own terms. He still checks his mirrors too often, but now it's habit, not fear. On Sunday afternoons, we walk through the park, and every time, without fail, he says, "You were the first person who stayed." And I answer, "Because I know exactly how it feels when no one stays." That exchange isn't romantic. It's human, it's real, it's respect. The kind the world tries to steal from us when it insists we're too much, too quiet, too dramatic, too sensitive, too wrong. The moral, for you listening now: if there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. The world spends a lot of time trying to make women doubt themselves. They say we're exaggerating. They say we're confused. They say we remember wrong. They say we made it up. They say the problem is us. And we lower our heads to keep the peace, not realizing that while we're lowering our heads, someone else is rewriting our story. So if you're listening to me now, woman, mother, worker, exhausted soul carrying more than anyone knows, I need to tell you something with the full force of everything I lived. Your pain is real. Your intuition is right. Your story matters, and you deserve to be believed. Caleb only stood up again because someone finally saw his pain. And I only rediscovered my strength because his story mirrored mine. So hear me when I say, Never let anyone erase your truth. Never carry guilt that isn't yours. Never let your voice be drowned inside your own life. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. And you deserve to be respected. And if no one told you that today, I'm telling you now. I see you, I believe you, and you are not alone. And if this story moved you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you love. This story ends here, but yours can begin again right now.